disgusting. Unbelievable, these people.
Oof, what are we looking at here?
Well, sir, someone was murdered and then thrown into this machinery here in this board game factory. We got a real sicko.
Well, looks like they'll be resting in pieces.
You disgust me. Hi everyone, welcome out to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yee, and this is a rapid fire roundup where I'm going to be going through about 10 games or so that I've played over the last little whiles here and telling you my thoughts on them, giving you some scores and everything. If you want to see these videos broken out into short little chapters, we have the Dice Tower Encore channel that you can see all of these videos, the group bundle reviews kind of split up. But let's go ahead and get started with this batch. Magic Rabbit here is a very cute little cooperative family weight game. This particular printing is from Alley Cat Games. I think they're doing a wider distribution of a game that came out a few years back, but I'm very happy to see this one. You are a magician, you are trying to put rabbits with different numbers of them, 1 through 9, into the appropriate hats, numbered 1 through 9, and if you're able to do that within the 2-minute timer, then you have won the game. You have to have them in order and in the right hats. This is one I can play with my daughter since she was 7, and this one is very cute. It is a real-time game with some tension, some stress to it, but it's one that hasn't stressed her out, whereas some other real-time games do. So I really like this one, very charming. And on top of just the little puzzle, all you can do on each turn is either peek into the hat or lift up both tiles or move them around. As they're shuffled around, you're trying to rearrange them into the correct places and in the correct order. And so simple actions, not too difficult. What impresses me, though, is that on top of having that good basic game, the game comes with 3 envelopes with increasing difficulty. And I'll tell you that I have not gotten past envelope number 1. I might be doing a disservice because I haven't reviewed all of the content in this game, but there's more than enough fun gameplays in here. I've peeked ahead. I couldn't help myself. I peeked ahead at these other ones and I thought, good night! You must get really good at this game to be able to do some of those challenges. And in fact, there's little, I don't want to spoil anything, but maybe little ways you can kind of combine some challenges. So anyway, there is a lot of game in such a simple little thing going on here. Magic Rabbit, I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. I think that this one is charming, very fun, family weight, and approachable. Something that I think could fit into a lot of people's collections. So a 7, a seal of approval from me. Sunrise Lane here is by Dr. Rainer Knizia, wonderful designer that I've come to like a lot more of his designs lately. Horrible Guild, who does really great productions, and I think they did a great production value with this. You'll notice this is a slightly smaller box, a little smaller than Ticket to Ride size. This is a small board, small little card game essentially. Every turn you are going to either draw up cards or you're going to play cards out in order to put buildings out onto the board. There's different colored spaces that match the colors of the cards. If you play multiple cards at once, you can stack multiple buildings up tall, and then you multiply the number of the houses that you stacked times the number of pips or dots shown on that particular colored space. So you could get a 20-point turn by stacking up 4 buildings on a 5-level space, or you could get 1 point by putting 1 building on a 1-level space. But you can play out all of your cards at once, up to a hand size of 5. And so you can stack up something huge, or you could kind of spread around the board, because the game also has really good end game scoring, where the 4 different quadrants, some of them you want to have the tallest buildings, some you want to have the most buildings, and then anywhere on the board at the end of the game, if you have the largest conglomeration of your colored buildings, then you also get some bonus points there. Without those endgame bonuses, this would be a mediocre game. In fact, this was originally an earlier game this is a redevelopment of that earlier game, Rondo. And that one, while clever, lacks something. And so that endgame scoring in here really makes Sunrise Lane, I think, a keeper. I'm giving this one a 7.5. Beautiful production. Some of the color houses are fiddly because you have to stack them up in a precise, they have to line up the chimneys, and on some of the houses that's less obvious than the other ones. So other than that, I think this is charming, I think it's very fun, and I think that, yeah, it's a 7.5 because it's a slight small game, but I appreciate having some smaller games every once in a while. I've spoken highly of Rainer Knizia's designs and given many high scores, including the review I just did there of Sunrise Lane. That shall not happen with my City Rolland build. This is a roll and write version of the original My City, and worse in every way imaginable. The component quality is atrocious. The form factor, the pages, the pencil that's hard to see on the page, that comes in many roll and write games. But man, you have to draw all of the polyomino shapes, and then you have replaced the deck of cards with dice. Some of the worst quality dice I have seen since the 90s. They are so lightweight that I'm afraid they will crumple in my hands. You could convince me they're filled with helium. They are so thin and lightweight and just terrible. And I'm not even a big component quality person, but this is silly. This is ridiculous. But all that aside, my biggest complaint about My City Rolland build is that it has it's almost identical to My City. It really is. The opening missions score the exact same way. It feels like you're playing that game again, but smaller and worse. And by worse, I do mean mechanically worse. I like what you would classify as flip and write games, because you flip over a deck of cards. That deck of cards tends to have a little bit of stability while maintaining randomness, and replacing that from the original My City with the dice in this game, you can roll all sorts of different shapes, so you're likely to repeat polyomino shapes. You're likely to get weird swings. You can get a single little square tile in this game by rolling a blank on one side and a 1 square on the other. So you draw a 1-size polyomino. If you have a bunch of those in a row, this game becomes wildly easier. And then you have to also color in the shapes, because you are provided a pencil, an awful pencil that doesn't show up on the sheets very well, and you have to either draw them with some cross-hatching or color them all the way in, and that's just ludicrous with this pencil. It takes longer than finding the tile and putting it on the board. It feels less satisfying. It's a worse product in every single way. I'm giving this one a 3 out of 10, because not only do I feel like this game doesn't really need to exist, I feel like this one shouldn't. So, harsh, but I would not recommend you seek out My City Rolland build. Fugitive Second Edition is a improvement over Tim Fowler's earlier game, Fugitive. This comes in a small little magnetic clasp box, has PVC quality cards on there, that durable type of card that you don't need to sleeve because they won't mark and they won't have tells. What is this game? This is, imagine a hidden movement game, the card game. So something like your Fury of Dracula or Scotland Yard or Mind Management type games, where one player is the fugitive running away from the other player, the marshal, trying to catch him. You play cards out as the fugitive face down. They have numbers 1 through 42, 44, but you can only play cards out that have a higher value, a value up to 3 higher than the previous card that you have laid out, and the marshal is trying to guess those card numbers. As the fugitive, you have a few extra tools at your disposal where you can discard cards, you put them with your next hideout location as extra boosted run values, so you can move 4, 5, 6 spaces ahead instead of just 3. But you're dwindling your hand, your precious hand of resources, hand of cards, because that's going to be super valuable. This is a great game. This feels like hidden movement, but just reduced to cards. The first edition is a game that I really loved, and I sold it off, and I at some point thought, I kind of regret that. But one of the things that this game improves in its second edition, not only the component quality and everything, but it uses the shift system found in Mind Management, where if you want to play as kind of the same side, I want to keep playing the fugitive and Wendy keeps playing the marshal, whichever side wins gets a shift card, a little bonus event that will help them. And you're more than likely going to kind of, use that as a little catch-up mechanism, balance out. I think that's a great addition. It replaces the event cards from the first game, which were a little bit uneven and were fun and cool, but they've kind of replaced that with what I think is a better event deck system. I think Fugitive is phenomenal, comes in a smaller, more reasonable size case, shows off Ryan Goldsberry's fantastic artwork. If I had to rate games for my favorite artwork, Fugitive very well could have my #1 favorite art ever. The cards tell an entire panoramic story of your escape from the police. This is a game, if you have not checked out, I highly recommend you do. I give Fugitive an 8.5. The second edition, a wonderful new extra, breathe a little bit of life into an older game that I really recommend. Fika, the Clever Coffee Break, is the next game here. A small box game from 25th Century. 25th Century has done some amazing things lately, like the Raw reprint that I think is wonderful. This is the opposite of that. This is a small game, so I was hoping for something interesting and clever that does a lot with a little, and instead, this is a small game that just swaps cards constantly. You have a row of 5 cards in the middle, and you're trying to play cards out into some sort of pattern, a lot of the same suit next to each other, similar numbers, particular numbers on ends of the row or something. And this has just constant swapping. Every time you play a card, you activate it. Swap 2 cards in your opponent's coffee shop. Swap 2 cards from your coffee shop with one over on the side of the board that's just kind of sitting out there. Swap cards from your hand and the card that you played down. A lot of those cards don't make any sense when they're the first card that you play. And so you can choose to skip the action, but then that's just a very uninteresting thing, especially because the cards that you play out will get swapped all the time. And so it's not even that it's mean. I've heard people say that, oh, this is like surprisingly mean. It's just, it's frivolous. Yes, I can swap my opponent's cards. Oh, they won't have a 3 next to a 3 anymore. They also do the same thing to me. Okay. Oh, I played out this great card right here. Oh, you swapped the card on your side of the cafe with the one on mine. And now we have each other's card. It's so meaningless of a game, unfortunately. It's just noticed on the back of the box, it has a little coffee bean scale. Complexity, 3.5 out of 5 coffee beans. It's not complex. It's just constantly swapping and swapping cards around. Luck, 2.5 out of 5 coffee beans. That's inaccurate. This is very lucky. It's not very fun. They lead off with the first name on here, Beth Sobel, because her artwork is excellent. This looks like a juicy, tasty game, something that you could bring to a lunch break and quickly play a few times. And instead, it's one that I just want to put away. I'm giving this one a 4 out of 10. I don't think it's a good game. It's too random, too much changing to be able to plan out anything. So even what feels like you should be able to do some clever stuff and set it up doesn't happen. 4 out of 10 for Fika. Energize the Duel. This is a game that caught my eye because it says 2 to 18 players, 5 to 10 minutes. Odd and interesting wide swath of player counts. Start off your meeting with a bang by playing Energized Duel. In just 5 minutes, everyone will be energized and ready to go. Outplay your opponents in short duels and win by collecting the most cards. Well, okay, well, what's going on in there? Well, the rules are nicely printed on the inside of the flap of the magnetic box here, and that's where the positive things that I have to say about this game end. You have 3 cards. You walk around aimlessly, and then you bump into someone and you say, I duel. You take one of your 3 cards and then reveal it, and they reveal one of their 3 cards. And each card shows a rock, paper, scissors symbol on the top right. Whichever one of you wins the rock, paper, scissors, you activate the effect on the card underneath it, which is basically saying, play a game of rock, paper, scissors. Arm wrestle. Both players stand on one leg with their arms crossed. Limp against the other player. The first player to lose their balance has lost. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Do not use this to start your meetings. The first player to reach the other side, comma, wins. The other side of what? Both players simultaneously stick out one hand and show 0 to 5 fingers. At the same time, shout a number. You win when the number that you shout corresponds to the total number of fingers shown. That's the most fun minigame in this game, by the way. Tap your opponent's foot with your foot. Squat and hold your hands behind your knees. The first player to waddle into the other player and make them fall over wins. This is terrible. This is possibly the worst game that I have ever reviewed on the channel. I'm giving this one a 1 out of 10. There's only one other game that I've given a 1. It was a classical music game by the Spectral Quartet, a little musical group, where you listened to a piece of music and then you as a group chose a 1-word card that you thought that piece that corresponded to that piece of music. This is as bad as that. I'm giving this one a 1 out of 10. I don't recommend Energized Duel, and in fact, you might get sued for making people play it. Oh, ho, ho, merry madness! An all-out game of frightful flinging! This game is themed in the Tim Burton-verse film, The Nightmare Before Christmas. You are Jack Skelly Boy or one of the other people that no one remembers the names of, and you're trying to get rid of a huge pool of resources that's sitting in front of you, various toys that you're making, and you are rolling dice to do so, and the dice will tell you a number and a type of toy, and then a direction. You fling it to the left or to the right or into the center. And then you roll again. Everyone is doing this in real time as fast as they can, trying to chuck toys left, right, or into the center. In the center, it goes into the toy box and then it's gone from the game. First player to empty out their little toy box chest sitting in front of them is going to be the winner. This is basically left, center, right. LCR, the little dice game, but it's done in real time, so it's already a vast improvement over that. This also has strangely good production. The tokens are really thick cardboard. They're like quintuple thick cardboard. They feel great. They're very easy to fling around. All that being said, you might have been deterred by hearing real-time dice chucking throw toys at the other player's game. And you would be right to feel that way. If this is not appealing sounding to you at all, you're not going to like it. I like a little bit of chaos, I like a little bit of silliness, and I like that this is a decent game with the Nightmare Before Christmas theming on it, so I think that this is one that you could pick up for people, particularly people who don't want to play complex games, who want to play very simple games like this. You could do worse. So, I'm giving this one a 6. I'm not recommending it. I don't think it's a great game, but I think it's serviceable, and for the theme and for the production and for everything, hey, it's this great time of year between October to December for something like this. But like I said, not recommending it. A 6 out of 10 for Merry Madness. Kiwi Chowdown comes from Detestable Games and Draco Studios, which brought us, I think, the absolutely wonderful racing game called Dodos Riding Dinos. This has the same cute, adorable-looking kind of animals. Look at them kiwis! And look, they're eating kiwis! The fruit, not the animal. That's cannibalism. I think that's bad. This is an adorable-looking area control game in which players are trying to move their kiwis around on this very bright, colorful board. I am hesitant on area control games. A lot of them are a little bit too serious for me and very player conflict driven. This one doesn't quite work for me because it is silly. And you might say, well, obviously look at it. But it's weird because it's silly and yet also kind of heady. It has a very clever little card hand management game where as you play out actions, you can move around the board, you can feed kiwis to your kiwis and make them bigger so that when they're bigger and they move around, they bump smaller kiwis. They could be 1, 2, or 3 stacked tall. And so a 3-stack moving around bumps all the littler ones out of the way. You can really have some fun bumping stuff around controlling the areas. I like the silliness and the goofiness. But then there's also a decent amount of rules around it, and the scoring is focused on those points of player interaction. But then it gets very zany, and stuff can change, I think, a little bit too quickly and too dramatically in between turns. If you feed a kiwi who's already size 3, they pop! They explode! They literally explode, and then they make everything else move around on the board, so the board state can change drastically. And so I think that for having as many rules as this one does, the amount of silliness doesn't quite jive. So I'm giving Kiwi Chowdown a 6. I wish that I liked it more. I wish that I could recommend it, but maybe you'll look at it and say, that's what I want. But for me, I want it in a shorter time frame. The box is 60 to 90 minutes, and I believe that that's pretty accurate. If this was a 30 to 45 minute game, that would be a sweet spot between silliness and headiness. And so for me, a 6 out of 10. This is Battle Cards Series 1. This is a series of print-and-play games from Postmark Games, designers Niels Johansson and David Thompson. David Thompson is a designer that I've really liked a lot of his stuff. He bridges the gap very well between what you would call strategy, war game, some conflict simulation games, with Eurogamer sensibilities, perhaps, on some of his designs. And I like a lot of what he has done. And so this is a bit of a minimalist, small little conflict game, war game, micro game. Niels Johansson has been a graphic designer in that space for a long time, and I really like the look of these. This kind of minimalist map over here on the side. You're going to be controlling units represented by dice. I'm going to, in fact, do a little bit of an overview on each of these 3 games, and then I'll tell you my thoughts. Here's one of the maps set up here, the Malayan campaign in this case, and the other ones here, we're going to have different setup rules and different win conditions. You are playing against the Japanese forces here. They're pushing you back, so you're trying to either retreat to Singapore or be able to fight and successfully take out one of the Japanese units of troops on the board here. The first step, allies can withdraw. You can move troops back. In this case, when you withdraw, it says you reduce the strength of the troop, move it back, and then you merge the strength of the troop together. The second step is the Japanese will advance. Then you go to the battle phase, where you're going to be rolling the die, the combat die, against each of the areas where you have a conflict. You roll against this chart. There's either no Japanese advantage in numerical forces, or a Japanese advantage, or a Japanese 3-to-1 strength advantage. I rolled a 2, 3, or 4, so I'm going to reduce the strength of my troops by 2, and their troops by 1. We go to the Allied air support phase. As long as the Allies have troops here in Kuantan, which has the airstrike symbol, I can do 1 strength of damage to one of the Japanese troops. Lastly, you advance the turn marker. So you have 6 rounds to try to successfully retreat troops back without having one of the win conditions, running out of time, or if the Japanese troops are able to advance here into Endao and eliminate the Allied troops there. If they're alone, they will win. Postmark Games has done things like this before. Other companies have this model of Kickstart, a print-and-play kind of series of games. I think it's a very smart little line or idea, product model, but for me, I don't like it because I'm lazy. And I recognize that that's about me, right? I don't particularly like the idea of printing sheets repeatedly. What attracted me to this, beyond the designer's pedigree, is the fact that this is a one-time print. You don't mark on here, you use the dice to manipulate everything. So I was attracted because guess what, I'm done. I now have this game, so I like that idea. The actual games, the little micro games, are good. They lack the intimacy and the care about the individual people that a lot of the David Thompson games do. Pavlov's House and his solo game series, Resist, and some of his other designs where you care more about the people. And yet, even though these are so abstracted down, they do have a different feel, and you still look at these as, yes, pips on dice, but as units, as representing units of humans, representing people that survive these conflicts. I think they did a good job of making 3 very different games, even though they're micro games and they're slight in a lot of ways, and they last 5, maybe 10 minutes. I like what they're doing, and they're distinct. In the Malayan campaign, the idea of retreating and trying to have a strong enough force retreat, or to be able to take out one of the Japanese units, it feels good that there's kind of this alternate win condition, and I really like that one. The next one here, where you're the Canadian forces trying to push in against Germany, feels totally different. And this one is fun, and I do like that the turn track not only has the regular turn track, but also, depending on a die roll, different weather conditions, and so in such a small framework, you've still been able to simulate some of those aspects of weather conditions, rolling against charts and stuff. But then this one here, Mortain, the idea where you are trying to maintain a unit over here on the hill 314, because they're going to be able to bombard different areas, and you will not win this one if you don't maintain that properly. So it's this clever, interesting struggle of how do you kind of manage your resources. I think that these are 3 very different feeling maps from each other, despite their simplicity. I really like what's happening. And on this particular one, I sit there and I really care about these people over here on the hill. And yet, the loss condition being these people over here makes me worry about them. This is the one that makes me feel a little bit more, I think, out of the 3 in here. As I said, David Thompson is a designer who I think can pull out that history and that simulation aspect a little bit, and keep the theme strong. And this one, because they're so minimalist, you don't get a lot of that, but you get little moments of it, and I appreciate that in the design. I think this is a great system. I'm looking forward to Series 2. I'm going to be playing this one more. I think that this works so well. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, because for the amount of investment, how hard these are to learn, they're so simple. You get a lot out of it in that ratio. Difficulty of learning versus the play you can actually pull out of it. I know for a lot of people you're going to say this is too slight, but I'm really attracted to these ones, and I love the fact that this is all of the rules printed on the side of each sheet. You can learn by just following the steps. You might lose your first game because you made some choices. Oh well, set it up again, go again. These are neat. I'm very happy with these, so an 8 out of 10 for the Battle Cards series. Series 1, like I said, looking forward to more. So there you go, that's another rapid fire roundup here in the books. Thanks for coming by the Dice Tower, listening to me jabber on about a bunch of different games here, some absolute dreck, and some real wonderful games. Thanks for coming by, and until next time, have fun gaming.